Obamacare. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Stupid people are ruining America.
The president just wants to take care of you. He just doesn't think you're able to do it for yourself.
There's a very thin line between communism, progressivism, Marxism, socialism.
The empire will strike back.
You still don't know that this was political.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of America Our Way. I am your host, Dustin Hoyt. I hope you've all had a great week. There's been a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff I want to talk about, a lot of stuff relevant to all of us. It's been a big week. Big week since last Thursday. Don't know how many of you have been paying attention to the news the last couple of days. I think probably most of you are. But there's been a lot of stuff about Islam in the last couple of days in particular. Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, middle of this week. We've had a lot of stuff about Islam that's come through. And as many of you know, most of you probably know, I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I spent a big chunk of my life in the Middle East. And so when it comes to Islam and Muslims, I know many of them. I grew up with a lot of them, and I'm friends with many of them. And in terms of Saudi Arabia in particular, I grew up there. So I've got kind of a special insight into that stuff that's going on over there. And then, of course, Michelle Obama causing a stir with her hair, of all things. And a lot of people just don't quite get it, if we're being serious here. Of course, we on VLR, we do a pretty good job. We generally, 99.9% of the time, we know what's up. But I think it's important to go over some of this stuff because I feel like I can give you guys something special. I got the stuff to give you the better information on this story. I've got the insight to provide you with information that you would otherwise not get. Information you're not going to get anywhere else unless you yourself know a whole lot of Muslim people. If you've spent much time overseas in the Middle East. And I am not talking about Abu Dhabi. I'm not talking about Dubai. If you're not in the chat room, I highly recommend heading over there and hopping in. You can communicate with me live during the show. I am always in that chat room during the show. I'm always looking at what's going on in there, keeping up with the folks. Hey everybody, we've got a couple guys in here hanging out, taking a listen to the show. Hello fellas, I appreciate you guys that are here. But I want to jump in and start with the Michelle Obama headscarf issue. I say issue in the most loose sense that can possibly be applied to a situation. It's not as thoughtful as it ought to be. It's not as big of a stand as one would hope. But it is interesting for a couple of reasons. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, the king of Saudi Arabia died, and a new king was put in place. And when this new king took over, he's actually the son of the guy, the son of the head of the Saud family who founded the country, if you will, united the clans or the tribes. Obama and an American delegation headed over there to pay respects to King Abdullah and meet the new king. And it was pretty interesting because when meeting a new king, King Salman, obviously Obama's had issues in the past where he bowed to the King of Saudi Arabia. And if for any of you who were watching, he did not bow this time, but many of the people in his delegations gave a little bow, like they were entering an Asian country. But it is what it is. So the king and President Obama met up in Riyadh, the capital city, and touched base, if you will. Now, what's really, I think, interesting is the president has kind of a unique situation with Saudi Arabia in that they've just kicked us in the teeth. And by us, I mean the American economy. They have turned up the spigot on oil and have just flooded the market. And what that has done, all this extra oil, all this excess oil, that has driven our oil prices down. That is the reason we are paying wonderful gas prices right now. And if you haven't filled up this week, I highly recommend doing it. I filled up this week for $20. For less than $20. It was like 19 something. And that was a full tank. And amazing. It's neither here nor there. So the president goes and he confers with the king and schmoozes, if you will. And you've got people like CNN saying the president had sharp words for Saudi Arabia. And saying that it has a controversial record on human rights. And it absolutely does. This is a country that throws gay people off of towers, that stones adulterers to death, that beheads anybody seen with drugs, that arrests, deports, dehumanizes, jails, tortures people who practice a different faith than Islam, who practice it. If you're caught practicing a different faith, you can have your life in serious danger. For instance, there was a writer who was critical of the Islamic leadership in Saudi Arabia who recently just got a whole bunch of lashes in public, and there's been some doctors who've talked about it since this has come out and said, 100 lashes is lethal for a human being, and obviously it's cruel and unusual punishment. We wouldn't do that here in America unless you're in the military. And what's really interesting is that President Obama was standing beside the king on the other side and shaking hands with everybody. But Mrs. Obama, the First Lady, didn't cover her hair. And a lot of people have had mixed reactions to this. I've seen some truly audacious comments put out by people I know saying that they're both Muslims and she should have respected her husband's faith and they should have stayed there, that's where Muslims belong, and all sorts of nonsense. And regardless of the likelihood of the president having practiced Islam in his life, which we know he did, and regardless of whether or not you believe he actually converted to Christianity is, again, irrelevant. The fact that Mrs. Obama went to Saudi Arabia and did not cover her hair has elicited many different reactions. One of which I thought was notable. Dana Lash clapping, giving the president's wife a slow clap, giving Michelle Obama applause for not kowtowing to what the Saudis would have liked her to wear. Now, what's, I think, the most interesting about this is that it's not necessarily, in this case, about her refusing to wear the burqa, as some of you know it, the abaya, the giant cloth covering over the entire body. A lot of people were wondering why she didn't wear that, and that's, there's no way a first lady would ever do that, unless there's a fundamentalist Muslim first lady in the future, which could happen, not anytime soon, but it eventually could happen. It's not something the First Lady would do. And as Islam-friendly as the Obamas are, you would never see that. They would never live that down. But what's interesting is she didn't even cover her hair. And even Hillary Clinton has been known to wear a badly wrapped headscarf out of respect for the people's faith and sensibilities. And so it becomes two different conversations. You've got some people saying, well, that wasn't very respectful, and then other people saying, go you, don't let them tell you how to dress. Well, what's interesting to me, what I have found to be probably the most intriguing is the people that have said, go you. That it's good that you didn't do what they wanted you to do. And I find it interesting because many people believe that she was told or asked or recommended to cover up, or that it was expected of her. And that's not the case, because the king of that country knows that he has no sway over an American president and his wife. He would not presume to command them. He would not presume to set a restriction like that. Now, you could argue that it was disrespectful, because when you're in someone else's country and you break their laws or disobey their rules in front of their leader, there is a discussion to be had with that. But I don't ascribe to that belief. I think that she absolutely was correct in doing what she did. Now, I think it was good of her that she wore long sleeves, wasn't figure forming or form-fitting clothing. It was, loose, billowy, and, that's respectful. But she didn't cover her hair, and I personally believe that it was a show of, we're not doing this. We're not going to ascribe to we're not going to kneel to you. We're not going to adhere to you. We're not setting our standards by your sensibilities. Now, I know in Asia you could say, well, we shouldn't be bowing when we go to Asia then, or, we shouldn't try other customs in other places, but this is interesting because Saudi Arabia is so horrible on human rights. They've still got female circumcision. They've still got women not being allowed to drive. Women are property in that country. They can't leave the country without a note from their husband giving them permission. They're not allowed to speak to men in public. They're not allowed to be in public by themselves. They can get in trouble for even talking to a store clerk without a man present to do it for them. I mean, it's really an interesting country, but it's really an oppressive, nasty place for women. And, women are treated like a commodity. And people complain about women being sexualized and marketed in America. And when you look at Saudi Arabia, you have to laugh at those people, because Saudi Arabia makes America, it puts it in perspective. We do really well on human rights. We do really well on gender issues. But Saudi Arabia doesn't. And so I'm with Dana Lash. I'm with a lot of folks, a lot of conservative folks on this one. I think it's absolutely correct that she should not cover her hair. I applaud her for not doing so, because it sets an example. Hey, we are Americans. We're not going to live life your way. We're not going to adhere to your customs, because it's not us. It's not our faith. It's not who we are. All that stuff. Now, that being said, I wouldn't be mad if she had done it, because it would have been a sign of respect when the king just died. So I would not have criticized her had she done it. But I am proud of her for I'm proud of her for not doing it. Whether or not she took a stand on it remains to be seen.